This week I'm going to show you all the ways I've helped people get back the ability to run pain-free. Normally I finish with demand versus ability, but it's so important here we're going to start with it. If you were patient enough with the demand, you could probably build yourself to the ability to run. Like, who says how fast or far you have to go, and then your body adapts bit by bit. But bodies don't just get infinite ability to handle demand. So on the ability side, the simplest I've seen, hundreds of people reporting that having given up forward, can't do it anymore, all they did was work backward, progressing from, let's say, walking to jogging to running backward. Now, that's not all I do. I don't think that's all you should do, but I would feel guilty if I didn't start with that concept, that going backward helps train your ability to handle forward demand. It's the forward that makes you go fast, but the backward can help you handle that. The main consideration would be having weather, a safe surface, something you're not going to slip on, something you're not going to get run over by a car. But in terms of simplicity, that's the simplest I've seen. In my original gym, the sled became our go-to because I could take athletes, grandparents, anyone, find a weight and pace that felt good for them, be working areas we need to go forward, and by also working backward, work areas we need when we slow down. I would use this in circuit with full body strength and flexibility exercises. So in 30, 45 minutes, someone could get cardio, strength, flexibility, rehab all wrapped up in one. Then when the government shut my gym down in 2020, I had to figure out how to get some of those effects. So with a straight leg, you've got something super gentle, and that can scale to one leg. And by getting good range at the bottom, holding at the top, you're setting a good foundation there. Let's say 20 reps. Then flip that around, flex up. Now you're getting the opposite side. Again, let's say 20 reps. This gets easier as you back up closer and harder as you reach further out. Then you have a progression from 2 to 1 leg and distance. So this would be very gentle, and without ever working through pain, you want to build up ability to be in this athletic position. So just by building that and then building that single leg, again, let's say 20 reps. So that ability there, down into the stretch position, up. Notice I'm trying to have everything in my body like a statue, except that positioning. That wound up being very effective. The only important thing to say after 5 years of observation is that when the knee was particularly a huge barrier for people, it then helped to have some progression of additional downhill ability. You have the angle, just as going downhill steeper would be harder. So you could start even with a flat foot. You could gradually back up, and you have assistance, just as if you were going downhill with a railing or a cane, that would be easier. So you have these new factors that you can scale. And then last, you have how far of a step you're taking. Just as if you were going downhill, you'd want to take shorter steps to be safer. So here, and again, let's say high reps, we could say 20 reps. The ability to control down, this has been the closest thing I've seen to knee magic in terms of taking things that you couldn't do in life because of the knee and then regaining them. As we transition from running to the desire to sprint, there's a huge disconnect between the reality, because having the space, the ability to do it safely, the ability to slow down is way different than just running. But what do we have going for us? 60 million treadmills in existence, and it being way cheaper to make the ones where you have to pull the belt. So this is training the back of my legs and butt, even lower back, differently than when that belt is spinning for me. And then I have the advantage of not having to slow down, but by going backward, the ability to train the areas that are gonna help me slow down. Now my mic has kept failing, so I've been shooting this scene over and over, and I wanted you to see the cool thing that I am wrecked, pumped, lungs, but so pain-free. So this isn't for the track athlete. I don't know if this will make a track athlete faster. I just wanna basically play basketball, play with my kids, never break down. This has been getting the job done for me for years because of that safety and rehab factor. Do you know what the number one injury in sprinting is? Hamstrings. You can see it as you go faster, those hamstrings get way more involved. And I'm lucky to have tons of athlete experience to be able to share with you what I've observed relate. So if we look at a regular deadlift, that's gonna relate a lot to starting to run. Then as you get to those faster speeds, I've seen how strong in a lengthened position those hamstrings are be the most relative thing to people sprinting hard without injury. Now that's 225 barbell is advantageous for heavier loading. Go back to demand versus ability so you can dial this into what feels right for you. So pretty much anyone could start this with dumbbells, even if you went through a very low range, gradually built it up, training that strength and flexibility. And I even think this is super underrated for the lower back, is having that strength and flexibility there. Now the other thing, very common sense, but you often find with hamstring injuries, a history of hamstring injuries and one side being very different from the other. So with this, you have very basic strength, but then you can go 2 legs up, 1 leg down, and then try to get where you feel even on either side with 1 leg. So this would be a common sense thing to do to combine nicely with that training for that lengthening. As you go from running to sprinting, you would also see more load on the hip flexors, both in strength and flexibility. Those guys connect from the lower back down to the leg. My favorite simple methods for them come from gymnastics and Olympic weightlifting here. You can just try to get those legs off, then straighten a leg, then 2 legs. I could get challenged there the rest of my life so simply. And then here we have factors of assistance and front foot elevation to work through whatever your full range of motion is on a split squat. So we're getting a stretch right here as we're loading the front leg, and it's not just a passive stretch, there is a bit of loading there. So progressing to not needing assistance, going lower would be ways to make it harder. And it's always worth mentioning that a stairwell is a near perfect regression device because you can hold on, you can elevate the front foot. That's how my mother got really good at that one. Another big shift occurs between just running and then stopping and jumping. Those sports, whether it's soccer or basketball, get excessive in terms of the demand on the ability of the body. There, I see the number one thing in my coaching experience is training below the position of stopping and jumping because it's an extra area of ability. And most people think of a squat as going partway down or bouncing out of the bottom, both of which are good exercises. What 99+% of athletes I've trained have not done is actually what can you own in that range below your sport, pause, and come back up. And you have these factors of heel elevation and counterbalance. So if I train 100 athletes, usually a bunch of them think they can't train that. And then I find every one of them can by getting some degree of elevating the heels and reaching out. A plate is most advantageous for that counterbalance. So if we see here, unless you just spent all day in class like this, doing your projects, mobilizing on the ground, you probably have lost some degree of mobility compared to what you naturally would have. So this tends to help people get a balance in that deep squat. Then progressing from that counterbalance would be a kettlebell or dumbbell a bit closer to the body. And then what would be closer than this? Well, that would be a bar on the body, which I consider optional based on how much demand you have. My timeline with this, Usain Bolt breaks the world record. I read an article how he could go even faster if he was straighter because he got this little side to side thing going on. Okay, I was naive, interesting. Go on with life. Then I'm a basketball coach. I'm trying to help kids get better. And it's undeniable that the kids with less effective moves are stiffer. And then the Michael Jordans of the world are here. So I would give these guys a drill where they would have to touch the ground and get the head over the foot. Now, that's a lot of pressure. Biomechanically, this is better. And same for the legs. Biomechanically, this would be better. In today's post, you can see I'm prepping those legs for these demands. Last week, I covered how I actually train the spine to go that way and that way. Fast forward even more, and I see David Weck talking about how this could actually be more natural for a lot of people, this head over foot running. Above all, I would say your observation is more important than anything I've said in this, anything you study. Your observation has to be king. Maybe if you're struggling to feel natural running, maybe that head over foot will distribute the pressure a little better. I want to finish out by shouting out my mom, who's a great example of this whole topic of demand versatility. I've noticed particularly since I had kids, to her it's like a survival thing. Imagine she's watching one of these kids, they're getting pretty quick, they take off. She could sprint after them and get them. So yeah, we've got modern transportation. She doesn't have to sprint, and she doesn't overdo sprinting. It's like this ability that she just finally maintains. She does her sledding, she does her walking or running backward, she does her split squats. So she does these things as part of a really sensible regimen, but she does want to maintain the ability to sprint till she's 100. So she's a badass example, an amazing human. Love you, mama.